Welcome to the People Profit Podcast, where we bridge the gap between generations in today's workplace. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by someone who's not only a valued client, but is also someone I truly admire in a personal and professional way. Lia Spiliotes. Is that correct?
Spiliotes.
Yeah, okay. All right. Lia Spiliotes. Over the years, I've had the privilege of getting to know Lia both professionally and personally. And one of the things I love most is how much we share in common when it comes to values, leadership, and the way we approach our work. Lia has built a strong career leading with both vision and heart. She understands the complexities of today's workplace and brings a perspective that blends experience with an openness to growth. What strikes me the most about Lia is her ability to connect across generations. She has a deep respect for wisdom and tradition, but also embraces the new ways of thinking. Today, we're going to explore her leadership philosophy, what her generation brings uniquely to the workplace, and what other generations may not fully realize about her and her peers. Thanks for joining us today, Lia.
Thank you very much, Sandy. I'm delighted to be here.
Yeah, I am too. Very happy to have you here. You and I have worked and chatted in a lot of different capacities. And your role as, executive director of the Crossroads Continuum, which is an amazing school. I've just come to really admire what you bring to the table for both the organization and then also for me personally. Just talking to you really inspires me. So can you talk a little bit about your role, what the Crossroads Continuum, what it's all about, and then we'll just kind of get into our conversation.
Sure. So I'm the president and CEO of Crossroads Continuum, and we are a all stages and ages of life autism support and services organization. And what we have are 5 different programs, starting from the youngest in our program is 18 months to the oldest in one of our programs is over 22, 27 or 28 now. So it's a very different career than what I was in before, although it still is in health and human services. It's a very different dynamic. There are about 165 employees. I would say the average age of our employee is probably somewhere between 28 and 29, and they're coming from all different backgrounds and flavors, if you will. So it's been a wonderful journey for me so far.
I love that. So you took on this role how many years ago?
It would be 2 years at the beginning of August. I was there for 2 years. I had retired for a little over a year from a very long career in health and hospital systems. And so I took a breather for a bit, and I think as a lot of people do at my generation, when you're thinking about transitioning, what do you really want to do for the balance of your life? And for me, working was what I wanted to do for the balance of my life.
That's what I love about you because I feel the same way.
Just maybe in a slightly different format, but working nonetheless,
So
a lot of
assuming
people.
you're 60s, right, when you started this job.
I was 66. I'm 68 now.
Yeah.
68 now.
So that's such a cool thing, right? And can you tell us, tell the audience, what philosophies guide you in the workplace? So I'm thinking about like what has kind of led you here from your earlier career to where, you're taking on this new role, kind of new capacity. What guides you? What's your philosophies?
Well, I guess a couple of things always from when I was very young. I my story. I'm the first generation Greek American, first generation to go to college. My brothers and my sister and I, and so from the very outset, we were slightly different than other folks. Very curious about schooling and differences and all that. So I grew up, I think, with a native sense of curiosity about how life outside of being a Greek American first generation was. So that's always been curiosity and interest in learning things has always been in my basic DNA. But what I did learn in my generation growing up in the workforce was really about structure and rules and a certain appropriateness of how you think about progressing in your career, very, very structured in that format. One step, the next step, the next step. And you sort of, I can see myself on a trajectory over these last 46 some odd years, moving incrementally to the position of being a chief executive officer of an organization. Very much a stepped approach.
Yeah.
One organization led to the next, one job led to the next, etc. So I think I bring that kind of structure to it, but I think that my openness and curiosity has always kept me young.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important for anybody of my generation is to not lose that idea of being young at heart and young in your mind and how you think about things.
So do you feel like the core values of your generation, which is the baby boomer generation, do you feel like the structure and kind of the knowing what your next step is and learning about how to get there is part of the core values of your generation?
I think it very much is. I think that for my generation, your life is sort of has been sort of prescriptive.
Yeah.
And you graduate from high school, you go to college, you get a job, you advance in your career, you get another job, and then when it's 65, you retire.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
that simple of a timeline.
Yeah.
And I think that that also is a perception that other people have about the baby boomers. And not all of us were, not all baby boomers were created equal.
Right.
There's a lot of us out there who really are very different. Although, when you look back on our careers, we pretty much followed that prescriptive
Right.
process.
And don't forget, being a female, in between all that, you have to be married and have some kids, and that whole thing, right? So,
Exactly.
yeah,
And in the baby boomer era, we found ourselves, and I did early in my career, being in a room where there were 12 people, 11 of them were men, and I was the only woman there.
yeah,
So it was also that kind of really finding your way in what truly was a man's world.
yeah. It's crazy. It's why it's so crazy to me thinking back at all those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, in your view, so you have a lot of Gen Z, you've got millennials, you've got the whole walk of life working in your organization. So, in your view, how does your generation contribute uniquely to the organization? Like, what is it about your uniqueness?
I think that the most valuable thing that my generation can bring is experience, as long as you don't make that experience the final answer.
Okay.
It's you bring perspective, and through the fact that you have this lived experience, you know and have different experiences and versions of how things turn out and what the challenges are. And I think it's very important. I think I've said this to you before, Sandy, old minds, new value.
Yeah.
There really is a lot of value that having had that experience, you can bring to bear to the younger generation, provided that it's not directive. You,
You sent me
you
that.
don't say this is how it's supposed to go,
Right.
really. But I think that's the biggest thing, having lived through a very different lifetime and set of experiences, and some things change, but other things really are the same. And I think having been through it is really a great life lesson that you bring to any organization, especially those with a younger population.
Yeah, yeah. And then, sometimes there's misunderstandings that come across the age groups, right? Everyone has their own ideas, and there's misunderstandings, communication, especially how each generation communicates is very different from what we found at our work. What do you think that the other generations get wrong about the boomers?
I think what they get wrong about the boomers is that it's somebody trying to tell them what's the right way and
Hmm.
what's the wrong way. And I don't and I can honestly say I know, there's always some in every crowd. I mean, I do think even the younger generation, they themselves think that there's a right way and a wrong way, but somehow or other being older of that older generation, and you can be confused with I could be not only the parent, but also the grandparent of
Right.
some of the people in my organization. So you just are labeled that way.
Right.
You're seen as the elder, and the elders might be wise, but they're not necessarily schooled in the ways of the newest generation. And I think that's really a misconception.
Yeah, yeah, I agree because you've come up and you've seen all the changes. I always tell people, I'm a Gen Xer, and the computers are just coming out, and we invented whatever they have coming in now. Uh,
Yeah.
so and you've worked across multiple generations. What's something that's helped you collaborate effectively across the differences?
I think fundamentally, I call it the how. It's the honesty, openness, and willingness. And I think the honesty to admit when you don't know something,
Okay.
right? And the honesty to say, I'm bringing my experience, but I'm not really quite sure if it's going to be a fit or not a fit. I think the openness so that I really can truly hear what people are bringing, even if it's not in my frame of reference or
Yeah.
in my experience. And then the willingness just to engage. I think that's probably the willingness is really the most important ingredient, because if you're unwilling to see things differently, if you're unwilling to hear things differently, if you're unwilling to try to do things differently,
Mm,
then you are at loggerheads with any other
yeah,
generation.
yeah. I
You
love
know.
that. The how. I've never heard that before, so I'm just gonna steal that, just so you know. Can you share? So I think a lot of times we talk about reverse mentoring a lot, where we pair someone from a different generation, older generation, with a younger generation, just because there's knowledge on both ends that everyone needs to learn. Can you share a story where maybe if you can think of one where you've learned something significant from someone from a younger generation in the workplace?
Yeah, I think I have a couple of different stories that I could tell you, but I th- I think what I've learned, and this is a very simple one, which is in my generation, but also I think, as you would know from our own experiences in the workforce, we really live by a sense of urgency and need to get things done.
Yeah,
And in my current environment, the hours are slightly different than what I was used to, starting at 7:30 and they end at 3:30. And so I think what the biggest awakening was for me was very early on in my time at Crossroads. I remember wanting to get some materials together for a presentation I was going to make, and I engaged one of the younger people in the organization who was maybe, I don't know, 25 or 26. And so I'm sitting in my office and it's like 3:30, and she tucks her head in and says, "Okay, you're the last one out. Turn the lights off." And I looked at my watch. I said, "It's 3:30." I said, "Well, what about the presentation?" "Oh, yeah, I'll finish it tomorrow and get it to you." Well, in my mind,
yeah,
wait, today. So even though it's 3:30 and you technically are off the clock, I would work until it was done to deliver to the person who was asking for it. Initially, I was annoyed, obviously, because
right.
that's the way my head goes sometimes when I need something. But then I realized that it's really a great work-life balance.
Yeah,
My generation, you worked until midnight. Even if you're only getting paid 40 hours a week, you worked the 60 or 80 hours to get the job done.
yeah,
There was none of this looking and saying, "Hey, you're the last person in the office to turn the lights out."
yeah.
It's like, you know, you stay there until it's dark, or in some of my jobs, if you stayed after a certain hour, they'd send you home in a car service, you
Wow.
know?
Yeah. So what was the lesson? There was a lesson on the work-life balance. Was that what you say
There
would
was a
be?
lesson was the work life yeah, the lesson was the work life balance. I think probably for me, the work life balance through a series of circumstances. I mean, I largely raised my son as a single parent.
Yeah,
So I had to work, I had to parent, I had to do everything. And so really working was the primary way to keep my life going. And parenting was also equally as important. But there was not an equal balance
Yeah.
to it. And I would have to say, if I erred on the side of anything, I erred on the side of working too much and saying that other stuff will come in time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas the younger generation, they're not waiting for that other stuff to come in time. They're saying, my life has this balance, and I really, really like working, but I also respect myself enough to say, when I need to take care of myself, that bubbles up to the
Yeah.
surface.
So when you think about the way that the workplace has changed so much, with the in person, hybrid, remote, that seems to be a sticking point with a lot of Gen Xers and above, a lot of our CEOs. And how do you bridge that gap with the philosophy of you're working and you're doing your time, you do the work till the job's done. What's your philosophy on this new style of working?
Well, when you boil it all down, any of these misunderstandings come because you basically don't trust the person that's going to do the job.
Yeah.
Full stop. So part of it is trusting the other individual to get the work done, however it is that they might get it done.
Yeah.
And I think building that trust through experiences is really the only way that you can do it. I think the hybrid has worked well. I do think I think what I've noticed with the younger generation who were initially preferring all hybrid, they realize that they miss the human interaction.
Yeah.
So what I've done with the folks that work, at least who aren't the direct care staff with the crossroaders that we're taking care of, what I do is I blend it
Okay.
and I say, especially for the people who work for me, I trust you're going to get the work done. I'd like to be able to have touch points with you at least twice a week,
Yeah.
but the other 3 days, you do what you need to do. And I have not once been disappointed.
That's
And
great.
I think part of that is, remember when our parents used to say, it's not that I don't trust you, I don't trust everybody else. Well, really, they were saying they didn't trust you.
Right. Yes.
That's what they were saying, but they were, and so I'm saying to them, you're an adult. You manage your time effectively. You get your job done. And if you don't get your job done, well, then it's a different conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think when you respect people enough and you demonstrate that you trust them by letting them do what they do, then I think you can manage in any, whether they are, even if they end up having to be fully remote for some time, which
Mhm.
some people do for life circumstances, they need to be fully remote. You can make it work.
Yeah.
You can make it work.
Yeah. I've got two Gen Zers that I'm raising, and one is fully remote, and one has a hybrid situation. And the one that's fully remote is craving, and his company's in Iowa. And he loves to travel and go out there because he loves to have the interaction with people. So I think you're right. I think it's moved from being like, no, I want to be home all the time, to, oh no, I miss the mentorship, I miss the places to connect with people. And so I love that fact that you're embracing that, because so many of us and above are not embracing it.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
hardliners.
there's a need for human interaction, obviously,
Yeah.
but then when you think about it, you need to have space and time to be creative and to have your own opportunity to work on something uninterrupted.
Yeah.
So I definitely, I was always I think for me, one of the reasons why this is just ingrained in me, this flexibility is, I grew up when I was younger, before I went to graduate school, I was a research scientist.
Okay.
And so when you think about it, in research, you're doing experiments all day, different times of the night, etc. So I was pretty much had 24 hours a day to get my work done and run my experiments. And so I grew up with that kind of flexible thinking.
Gotcha.
Not everybody does.
Yeah.
When you balance the prescription on how you have to run your life, this was really kind of an interesting and fun way to have that embedded in my DNA around that, this flexibility.
Well, they're lucky to have you, I have to say. So you're someone who balances professionalism with authenticity. You're probably one of the most honest and just approachable people I've ever met in your position. And So how does that influence your personality and the way that you balance these things? How does that influence the way that you show up every day as a leader?
With empathy.
Yeah. Okay.
Uh, and in particular, and you and I share a similar story, running an organization that is a solid support for individuals with autism and being the mother of an autistic child, I show up with empathy, not just sympathy.
Yeah.
I really understand what the folks in our organization do day in and day out. So I show up with empathy, and I also show up with curiosity.
Hmm.
How's it working for you? I think some of the most amazing ideas that have come forward in this organization in the year-long strategic planning process that we had have come from people at the front line. My curiosity at how do you do this, or what would you think if,
Yeah.
really being inquisitive and asking people what their thoughts and opinions are. And that, I think, also because of my experience being a parent of a child with such severe disabilities, I had to ask questions.
Yeah. And
I
that's
didn't know, I wouldn't know.
right. And I think going back to our earlier part of the conversation, where you said that that's the one thing you were always curious about education and things like that. We in the leadership world and the leadership development world, we're talking about curiosity being the new skill for leaders, but it's actually everything that's old is new again, right?
Yes.
So I think
Yes.
that's super interesting how that kind of correlates there.
Well, there's this, for me at least, this perception that I have that with the younger generation, and I think it has to do with the advancement of technology and all manner of things.
Yeah.
There's this looking forward. Oh, that was before. Now there's all this bright, shiny new stuff.
Right.
When the reality is that stuff that went before was just at that time, but it didn't mean that its value stopped as soon as something new came along.
Yeah.
All this new stuff is built on a foundation of something that came before, which still lives in it. It's just expressed in a different way.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's so great. So when you look at the younger generations coming into the workplace now, what do you admire about the way that they lead as compared to your leadership style?
Well, one of the things that I do admire about them is that they don't get as much sensory overload as I get.
Okay.
Because, thinking back, you and I probably, when we had to do a book report, we went to the library and pulled out the Encyclopedia Britannica and paged through. As time goes on, it's a bit slower. Now there's so many avenues within which to receive information when you think of all the social media platforms
Hmm.
and just now with artificial intelligence. And what I admire is their ability to manage so many multiple streams of information coming in and make sense of it all.
Yeah.
I pare down where I get my, not where I get my information, but how much information that I that come in from social media platforms, et cetera. And I'm just always amazed at their ability to take this huge, like almost tsunami of information and figure it out
On
so
a
that
day
it's all.
on a daily basis.
Mm,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't. I mean, I think that's really good. The one thing that I will say that I think technology has not done right by the younger generation is I don't think it forced the same kind of critical skills
Yeah.
thinking that it has in prior generations that didn't have this technology so easily at their fingertips.
Yeah. I
I
would
think it can be
100%
taught,
agree.
but it's not there.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I like 100% agree. So we still need the human aspect, and you still need to be able to just figure out how to get out of situations and problem solve.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah. Because not always the answer's not always right.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I mean, that's all that it is problem. It's really smart problem solving.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So on the AI, how have how have you adapted to this AI revolution
Well,
that's coming in?
I happen to be a really big fan of artificial intelligence, and I will tell you I'm a big fan of artificial intelligence, because I've used it as a way to gather billions and billions of pieces of data, form something, and again, it's only as smart as I put into
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
right? It doesn't take on a life of its own, but it brings together information together, kind of pulls it together enough for you to look at it and then start to kind of look at it one side, the other, tweak it a little bit. It's kind of foundational, I think, and I enjoy it tremendously, provided that you use it appropriately. You don't just use it and have that be your work. You use it to shore you up and bring this information to your fingertips. And I'll tell you a story. I have a very close friend who was diagnosed with lung cancer,
Oh,
and being a scientist by training, I used artificial intelligence to gather up all and find out the right research papers. And I was able to actually type the cancer down to the specific sort of it by using artificial intelligence. That would have never been possible, ever,
that's amazing.
in such a short amount of time. Yeah,
So if you're
yeah.
so if you're speaking to people your age, even the Gen Xers who are like, I don't want to. What do you say?
It's it's artificial intelligence is just that. It's artificial. And what I look at it is more augmented intelligence, that I'm the person who is the living, breathing intelligence, brain working. And this helps augment my thinking. And what I call it, a lot of people, I'll send something and I'll say, this is a bit AI and a lot of spit,
Yeah.
personal spit in here. And I think when you balance that, when you say, I'm not just taking this piece of paper and handing it to you and saying that I'm all done, this piece of paper caused me to think and edit and produce something myself
Hmm. Yeah.
that could be based on, but can be based on, I mean, it's just a better version of a Google, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Extra
Yeah. I always tell people like it's not going away. So so don't wait to embrace it, and learn how to prompt and use it.
well, and you can also share, I mean, folks like us who use it in this way can also teach other people how to use it.
Yeah.
And again, it's about spending the time to teach other individuals how it can be done, whether they choose to do it or not, to show them another way. And I think that's, to me, the biggest thing about getting along intergenerationally is showing people here's another way, but not being so wedded to it that you can't see anything outside of it. And that cuts both ways,
Right.
older to younger and younger to older. Like,
Yeah.
what do you people know? You're just,
Yeah.
old. I'm just old.
Yeah. And then for the older generation, like, what do you know? You don't have the experience. So it's
Exactly.
so much.
Everybody gets stuck in their own vision without really seeing what's there. They just are so they have such a perspective that they can't get out of their own way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
So if you could leave one key message for the other generations about your own, what would it be? And start with the Gen Xers. What would you tell them?
Well, what I would tell the Gen Xers is that you don't need to compete with you don't need to compete with the baby boomers. We're all, I always sense that with Gen Xers there was this, they were a little bit of the lost generation, right? They were overwhelmed by just the sheer numbers of the baby boomers. But what I would say to the Gen Xers is you have value in your own right,
Mhm.
and you don't need to steel yourself for the competition. Just allow yourself to be free about what it is that you know and how it is that you interact with other generations. And then for the ones that are below that, I would say, um, just to continue to be inquisitive.
Mhm.
Don't ever lose that curiosity. Don't allow your own feelings about something to basically dampen your curiosity to understand people, situations, personalities that are new, maybe unfamiliar, or for which you have a preconceived notion of how
Mm.
they are.
Yeah.
Always be looking for, looking for that one thing. People used to always tell me, Leah, because I would be friendly with or get into all these different groups, and they'd say, you're really not very discerning because, with all these people you're friends with. And I would say, on the contrary, I am very discerning
Mm.
because I can find that one thing that I can relate to
Yeah.
that makes that person special. So I would say be discerning to find that 1% that's there that you can relate to
Yeah.
and build from there. Build from there.
Think commonality, right? It's really huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so, what's next for you personally and professionally? What are you most excited about right now?
So I think what I'm most excited about, and again, it's the technology piece. I've always been fascinated by technology. I was been working very, very closely to develop technologies to be able to drive experiences to the autistic population, to
Yeah.
individuals with autism in a broader way. And so for me, the thing I'm excited about is how can we harness digital technology to extend the reach of autism services and support to the broadest population possible outside of our bricks and mortar, outside of the Commonwealth and beyond. So that's the one thing that I've been really focused on from a future strategy standpoint is how do you exploit digital technology to really serve, to reach as many people as you can.
So you're certainly not going out to pasture anytime
Now,
soon.
as I said to you before, they're going to have to carry me out in a box
Yeah.
because I'm not going anywhere. There is a luxury about being in a career, a sort of second half of life career is that I'm not in a hurry to go anywhere
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
I was a bit in a hurry in some ways as I was moving up to see myself get to the top as far as I could. But now I feel like I can relax and really think about how all of my experience and my relationship with the younger generation, because they can help me figure out how to use digital technology to reach as many people as possible.
Well, I
So
can't wait to see what happens with the
yeah,
whole organization and what we talked about over breakfast. It just sounds amazing. Um,
thank you.
so Leah, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I
My pleasure.
always love our conversations and
My
how
pleasure.
the honesty, openness, and willingness. That's a great acronym. I know our listeners are going to take away so many valuable insights from everything that you've shared.
It's my
Um,
pleasure.
yeah. Before we close, for anyone who wants to connect with you or continue this kind of conversation, what's the best way for them to reach you and learn more about you and the organization?
I know this will make me sound really, really young. Text me. Text me. I'm an avid texter at 617-306-3278 and just identify yourself. And I guarantee you I will text you back within a few minutes.
I love that. I'm not a texter, so that's something my Gen Zers are like, "Ma," I'm like, "Sorry, I don't like to text." I am your typical Gen Xer when it comes to that. Great. Um,
Thank you so much, Sandy.
yeah,
This has been wonderful. I
thank
really appreciate what you're doing and what you do for the workforce in general. And I know I speak as someone on behalf of Crossroads Continuum, what you and your organization have done for our employees and staff in helping them to develop into the best they can be and also to becoming future leaders, I think is a very necessary part of the mix.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. And to our listeners, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with your friends and colleagues. These cross generational conversations are what help build us up and make us stronger and more connected in our workplace. Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next time on the People Profit Podcast.